Hello, everybody. It's Friday. That means it's time for another topic of the week. So, first things first, last week's topic on the Warhammer Cafe. I was surprised by how many people said they're going to make the trip, and that's awesome. And honestly, it kind of inspired me to make sure that I get down there myself. Uh, it was interesting. I was glad to see our old friend Paul Cunert jump back in and make some recommendations, some thoughts about what he wanted to see, and I agree with that. So, if you haven't followed up with Paul, you should go check him out. He definitely, it's good to see him jumping back in. I spoke to him a little this week. He's been going through, got married and a whole bunch of other stuff, but I hope he's still able to make some videos every so often. So shout out to Paul. But this week, while we're waiting on the Deepkin, they're coming. They go on pre, depending on when you're watching this, they go on pre-order tomorrow as I'm recording this. And so we'll talk about the Deepkin and what we think about them in weeks to come. But I took a little break from working on my daughters. I got to a nice even point, got to around 1,400 points, felt good about it. And I wanted to take a little break to work on an entry for Golden Demon since I'm going over to Warhammer Fest. And so I'm working on this Shadespire crew. I'm working on these Orcs, Iron Skulls boys, which are a great unit. And it's actually been really fun painting this Shadespire crew. And it made me think about sort of unit painting in general. I came off of doing the snakes, the new Melusai from the daughters right before this, and they were actually really fun as well. And it got me thinking about how different it is painting a unit versus, a hero or a monster or something like that. I mean, it's something we all intrinsically know, but I'm not even talking about like having to grind through a unit of 30 or 40 or 50 or something like that. A lot of units can exist on the table, and maybe it's just like 5 guys. Blight Kings, those Melusai snakes, these Shadespire orcs, you can put them on the table as 4, but, a unit of 5 brutes, whatever. Stuff like that. There's lots of units that are 5 or 10 or maybe 20, and that's still enough. Where you can take some time on them, you can enjoy the sculpts. You're not just like factory lining to get everything done. And it made me think about what are my favorite units that I've ever painted. And a good unit is such an interesting thing when it comes to like the hobby perspective, because it has to be unique enough to sort of jump out and be visually striking, but samey enough that they all look like they belong together. It has to have enough detail to be interesting, but not enough, or not so much that it becomes overwhelming if you do need to do 10 or 20 or 30 of them or something. And so I was thinking about that and what is my favorite unit I've ever painted. And I wanted to talk about that as the topic and what makes it that. And when it came down to it, I do think these guys put me in mind of it. But I think my favorite unit I've ever painted, my favorite unit from any army that I've ever done, is honestly probably Brutes from the Ironjawz. Each one of them has a wonderful bit of character to them. They have nice little options, like some of them can have peg legs and some of them can have, they have bare feet, and they have lots of different interesting weapon options. 3 of them are going to be armed relatively the same. 2 are going to be very different. So very different faces. They have nice different poses, but not like, they're not witch elf all over the board or something. They're good even with 5, like 5 brutes is a perfectly viable unit, so you finish that 5 and you feel like, oh, okay, I've done something here, right? You finish like 10 witch elves, or pick your favorite 10 zombies, there you go, and you're like, oh, I don't know if I really accomplished anything there, because I don't know if I'd ever put just these 10 on the table, right? Whereas when I finished those brutes, I was like, yeah, this is good. Like, this is playable, useful. I'm going to put just 5 down often as a unit in an army. The detail on them is great, but not overwhelming. They have enough space that you can use lots of different techniques on them and have it be useful. Both for beginners, they're good for things like dry brushing and washing, but for myself, they were great because I could do a lot of freehand and battle damage and stuff. So they have these nice armor plates. They've got very expressive faces. Some of the best faces I've ever painted are on brutes. Their faces have these wonderful detail in them. They're like such great, emotional, evocative orc faces on the brute faces. So as I thought about it, I was like, that's, these guys kind of put me in the mindset of that. They're obviously more based on Ardboys than Brutes, but as I thought back on it, I was like, that really is my favorite unit I ever painted. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk about. So, what I want to know is, what's your favorite unit and why? Do you have similar criteria to myself, and or is there something else that stood it apart? What's your favorite unit you've ever painted? And you can factor into it, how they play in the game. I think that's perfectly reasonable, because if you feel like you painted it and you got a lot of value out of it, putting it on the table, that certainly contributes, right? So there you go. That's this week's discussion. Your favorite unit to paint. Look forward to it. Drop your comments down below. Let the discussion begin. As always, if you've got a response video, go ahead and link that, and I'll throw that into the description. As always, last week's video on the Warhammer Cafe is linked down below, so you can always go down there and check that out. But as always, I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time.